8th, 2019. Invocation will be via cell phone by Mr. Neville. Mr. Neville, go ahead.
Thank you. Over the past 2 weeks, two former Enfield Public Schools staff members passed away, Mary Newport and George Rippish. Having worked closely with both Mary and George for most of my career, I'd like to share some remembrances about these good people and their contributions to the school district and the Enfield community. Mary Newport worked in the JFK cafeteria for 25 years. She was the cafeteria manager during my tenure at JFK Principal, and I knew her quite well. She's a person I saw every day, whose primary task was to meet the daily nutritional needs of 1,200 students and staff. Not an easy task by any means. I knew her as a capable, dedicated, and wonderfully kind lady. She took pride in providing the best for our students and staff. She's also the one who was always very observant and sensitive to the needs of the kids coming through the cafeteria. She was skilled at picking up on when a student was out of sorts, maybe forgot or lost lunch money, was being picked on, etc. She would always let me or my administrators know so we could intervene and help those youngsters right away. Not a person who sought the limelight, Mary was content to do a quality job for the youngsters in her care. Though not well known outside JFK, she was very well known and appreciated by JFK staff and students for the critical role she played at JFK daily. They saw her dedication, her kindness, and her good nature, and knew that these qualities contributed to making JFK a very good school. Mary will be greatly missed. George Rippish was someone many of us at this table knew well, mainly from our work with him on the Enfield High Building Committee. George was an Enfield guy, an Enfield High alumnus. He came back to his alma mater after college to spend a 35-year career as a technology ed teacher and department chair. That's a shop teacher to us old guys, but a technology teacher now. George loved kids, he loved the work, and he especially loved helping folks, both students and colleagues. An exceptional teacher and friend to all, his talents and giving nature were well known. One of his talents was he could fix just about anything. Master of all things mechanical, he loved challenges, and there was no problem he wouldn't attempt to solve. Everyone brought projects to him, and he graciously would make them better than new. George was one of those teachers that everyone loved. Friend to all, hard worker, and totally involved professional. George's involvement in the school district and his giving nature didn't stop with retirement. He was the chairperson of the Enfield High School Library Renovation Project for many years and spent an additional 6 years as project coordinator of the complete Enfield High renovation project ending in 2017. If it wasn't for his illness, I have no doubt that he would have applied for the JFK Building Committee as well. It was simply part of who George was to contribute his skills to making things better for his community. As Dick Gray said in his eulogy on Saturday, George Rippish was one of the good guys. Teaching was his trade. It was not his job. George was more a calling or a vocation. It allowed him to share his talents in giving nature, his good nature with his community and change things for the better. Without doubt, George, you made a difference and you will be missed. Mary and George touched many people in their careers in Enfield. Neither sought accolades. They simply tried to do their best, and in doing so made a positive difference in the lives of those who knew them. I'd ask you to please take a moment to reflect on and honor the lives of Mary and George, and please keep them and their families in your prayers. Mrs. Hernandez will now do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America.
Oh, he's watching it on TV. Can you tell him?
Tim, turn down your volume. Okay. Thank you for those kind words, Mr. Neville. Fire evacuation. We have two exits out the rear of the chambers, out to the parking lot, or to my left, your right, left down the stairwell to the rear parking lot. Can we have roll call, please?
Mrs. Hernandez?
Here.
Mr. Neville?
Say here, Tim. He's here.
Sounds like E.T. Mr. Ryder?
Here.
Mrs. DePoe?
Here.
Mr. Rutledge?
Here.
Mrs. Riley?
Here.
Mrs. LeBlanc? Mr. Renier?
Here.
Chairman Cruzel?
Here. Okay, number 6, board guests. Mr. Drezik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have a board guest tonight, which is about 18 months in the making. So since I took over, at no fault of their own, we've been trying to schedule our friends from ETLA to come and present to the board. So with great enthusiasm, I welcome Maureen LaFrancis, and I'll allow her to do the introductions when she gets up here so I don't mix up any names. But I'd like to welcome Maureen LaFrancis, who is our head teacher at our Enfield Transitional Learning Academy.
I get to sit down? Okay,
Just make sure that little red light's on.
it is. All right.
Beautiful.
Hi, I'm Maureen LaFrancis, and I run the transition program along with 5 job coaches that I have.
Excuse me one second. Just pull the mic closer to you. Just be afraid.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. So I have 5 job coaches that work with me, and today we currently have 11 students in our program, and we work within the community. We're out at various establishments within the community who have welcomed us to work alongside them. Okay? Students develop job skills along with social skills to determine what makes a good employee. They also, along with being part of the community, we reinforce functional daily living skills back at ETLA. We do volunteering in the community also. The students will be talking about some of the volunteer work that we do, along with their jobs that they do. All right? These skills that we teach them help to reinforce independence within their family, and also within their alternative living environment that some of them experience. Today I have with me James Mark, Brittany Wagner, and there were 2 other people that were supposed to come but did not come today. So James and Brittany, would you like to come up? I'll let you sit down here, and I'll, go ahead, James. Oh, you're being such a gentleman. There you go, Brittany. All right. Oh, you're a little nervous, aren't you? Okay. We had it
We're
all.
among friends. You're among friends. I
That's
promise.
right. Remember, Mr. Drezik's right there. All right? So we had it all rehearsed as to who was going to say what. But with some missing, we might have to ad-lib a little, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. James, you're going to talk about ETLA, and you're going to talk about where you work, and you are going to be reporting on Danny's Pizza and Springfield College and St. Joe's, where we did some volunteer work, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you can go ahead and do that right here. And, yes.
Ladies can go first.
Ladies can go first. Okay, Brittany, you're going to talk about the food shelf and what you do there and why you like it so much.
Hi, I'm Brittany. I'm going to talk about the food shelf.
Can you tell us when you go there, what you do on certain days when you go there?
What we do on Mondays is that we clean the tables, we clean the freezers and refrigerators, we clean the shelving units. And on Wednesdays, we help bag for the customers.
Okay. What other job sites do you work at that you enjoy?
We also go to CVS, which we help them sort the stock.
What do we have to focus on when we go
The
there?
expiration dates.
Expiration dates are very important, aren't they?
Yes.
Right. Okay, because we don't want people to get sick from expired food and products and medicines. Okay. James, you've worked there too, also, right, at CVS? And what did you learn this week? What do we have to do with the product that's the newest?
Put them in the front No, in the back.
In the back, that's right. Okay. And then the older products go where?
In the front.
In the front. All right. Where else have you worked that you really enjoy?
Danny's.
Danny's Pizza. And what do you do there?
Cleaning. Cleaning.
Talking to the microphone.
Sorry.
Right there.
They can hear you.
Oh, they can hear. Okay. Go ahead. What do you clean upstairs in the restaurant?
Chairs, tables.
What about the floors? You
Oh,
vacuum?
yeah,
You vacuum when you go downstairs or upstairs?
yeah.
Okay. What's so important that you do that's downstairs?
The pizza boxes.
And can you tell us how you make pizza boxes and what's so important about that? Are there certain steps you have to follow?
Yeah, we had to do all the pre-folds.
Pre-folding. What happens if you don't pre-fold?
The box will just be messed up.
They'll rip. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. And how many boxes do you make sometimes in a day when you go there?
50. More than like 50.
50. Okay. How about you, Brittany? When you've been there?
I make around 30 to 50.
Okay, yeah. Brittany perseveres. No matter how hard the job is, she keeps working. Where else have you guys got to experience going on Thursdays? What do we do?
Springfield College.
And what do we do there? Tell them all about that. That's the highlight of the week. What do you do?
We get to go to the gym program up at Springfield College. Sometimes we go swimming.
Anything else? Can you add on? Anything else that you do in the gym there at Springfield College? What have you gotten to experience this year? What kind of games do you play in the gym with the students, with the college students? Brittany, you want to help them out? What are you good at shooting?
Basketball.
Okay. And then we travel over to East Campus, and what are some of the activities we do at East Campus?
We do disc golf and sometimes we take hikes.
Yeah. And also at the other campus, what do we get to? A couple times a semester, we get to go swimming, right? And when we're done with our activities there at the college, where do we get to go?
To the Cheney Hall.
To Cheney Hall. I don't think they know what Cheney Hall is. I don't think they've been to the college.
It's the dining hall.
Variety of food,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And what are some of the favorite? What else have you done to learn to volunteer at ETLA? Where did you work, and who did you work with?
We went to the St. Joseph's community home and we helped Danny serve a turkey dinner.
All right. And before we went there, what did we prepare? There were 85.
The candies.
We made candies for them, didn't we? And what did we have to do with all of those?
Put them in bags.
Put them in bags. And not only do we work out in the community, what do we do at Alcorn when we're back for upstairs? What are some of the
Recycling.
recycling upstairs? Yep, for Mr. Drezick and all of his, all their shredding that they have to have us do. What else? What have we been doing this week? What have we been bagging and counting and
Popcorn, and we've been folding little paper.
advertising what?
The popcorn.
Because what's January 19th?
Popcorn Day.
National Popcorn Day, that's right. And everybody in the school district is going to get popcorn, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What else do you want to tell them that we do? Anything else? James, when you first started transitioning, and same thing with you, Brittany, last year, when you started to transition to ETLA, you were a little nervous. How do you feel now about coming to the program?
Pretty good.
Yeah, you don't want to miss a day, do you?
No.
No.
That's right. Anything else you want to say? I wish our other partners could have been here today, but yeah, maybe next time.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for having us.
No, thank you. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Questions?
No.
Anybody?
Ms. Hernandez?
Maybe they have some questions for you.
I do.
Okay.
James
Yeah.
and Brittany. I just want to say thank you so much for coming, and this is really special for me on many levels. And I just want you to know that I'm really proud of you for coming tonight and telling us about this program. I think it's really important. And I don't know if you know, but I'm autistic, and one of the things that was really powerful for me was to find a job that I loved to do, and it made my heart happy to do it. And I wake up every single day loving what I do, and I hope the same for you, and I'm really glad that you have these opportunities to make your heart happy. So thank you for coming and sharing with us tonight.
And I'm sure that these two here that we have do a lot of activities outside of our program. James belongs to Best Buddies, and he volunteers at, where do you volunteer on Sundays, James?
The Children's Museum.
Children's Museum. How many bowling leagues are you in?
3.
3 bowling leagues. What else do you do for the 4-H?
Showing dairy cows.
Showing dairy cows. And what's the name of your dairy cow?
This year.
Last year.
Pansy.
Pansy, that's right. So you're involved with the 4-H. Brittany, you do unified sports, and she still has the opportunity to go back to Enfield High and work with the unified sports, right?
And I also do lamplighters.
So if you saw the
Awesome.
last production, she was in it, and this, she's going to be starting again. So they're very...
Acting is my favorite.
These two just do a phenomenal job.
Mr. Neville, you have any comments?
No, thank you. Not at this time. I think I'm really happy to hear them come before us and explain the program. I think they're doing a wonderful job. Thank them.
Go on and on, but
Yeah.
okay.
Anyone else? Mr. Renier?
Hi, James and Brittany. How are you?
Good.
My name's Rich, and I just want to say I don't know where you guys find all the time to do all this exciting stuff that you guys are doing. That's absolutely great.
They have wonderful parents.
Absolutely. And where do you bowl? Where do you like to go bowling? Bradley Bowl, Shaker Bowl?
Probably like close to like the Shaker Bowl.
Oh, okay. Awesome. I like to bowl.
Why is that? Sometimes you don't like change, right?
Yeah.
But Bradley Bowl is called what now?
Spare time.
Oh.
Wonderful.
Well, I'm glad you're able to fit that into your busy schedule and Lamplighters into your schedule, and you guys are doing a great job. So thank you for the work that you're doing for us, too. It's so great to hear. So thank you both.
Anything else? Something?
Miss Riley?
Well, I can't wait to go to Danny's Pizza and get some pizza from those pizza boxes for sure. And I'm really excited because the minute you came up here, I'm like, I think that's Brittany from Enfield Sports, Unified Sports. And you can go back, so that makes me even more happy because I heard good things. Yeah. Yes. So thank you for coming up here and speaking with us. It was really nice to meet you and get an idea of what you guys do every day. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You did a wonderful job. Thank you. I know it's not hard. I know it's hard to come up and speak. It took me a few years to figure it out myself. So you guys are great, and thank you very much. And let's give them a round of applause.
Okay. Are we ready? All right.
Thank you. Number 7, Superintendent's Report. Mr. Drezick.
For our student representatives, I just want to add while everyone's here, Mr. Renier's question was properly answered by Ms. LaFrancis, that why these kids are so amazing because they have wonderful parents. They also have wonderful teachers and coaches that work with them all day long. And if I can just add that 2 years ago, when we now not only became friends, we became roommates when we moved over to Alcorn. We actually invaded their turf. And when we talked about Brittany having strong perseverance and all the kids having strong perseverance, when we first went over there, some of the rooms over there were a bit messy, to say the least. And we went into one in particular room. It was a closet in the gym that was all filled with years worth of clutter from different departments. And I happened to run into Maureen, and we couldn't really tell her why we were there. And she said, "Do you want me to have the kids clean the closet out?" I said, "Well, it's a lot to work. We can call Buildings and Grounds to do it." She goes, "No, the kids will do it." And about 45 minutes later, she sent me a picture that looked like the room had been just newly built. And I said, who did you hire to do that? She goes, "No, the kids are done. What else you got us first next?" So when she mentioned the things that we have to do now, when you talk, these are the hardest working kids I've ever seen in my life. And it is a joy to be in them in the same house with them. So I want to thank you guys for coming, and we'll get you guys here back and get Brittany even more famous than she is.
Thank you. Thank you.
So which one wants?
So
Let's
I'm
do
sorry.
Matt first. Matt, go ahead.
Matt has a busy day of studying to get back to, so we're going to let Matt go first tonight.
Go ahead, Matt.
That being said, we have midterms coming up. They are starting Friday, January 18th, I believe it is. So needless to say, we're all looking forward to that. And then we have some musical news. We have a lot of concerts coming up. This Thursday, January 10th, the orchestra and small ensembles concert is happening at 6:30 in the Enfield High Auditorium. And next Thursday, same time, same place, is the band and jazz ensemble concert. So we're looking forward to that. And last Friday and Saturday, a group of students from the Enfield High Band and Chorus went to perform at the Connecticut Music Educators Association Regional Conference at UConn. So they had the opportunity to perform there with a bunch of musicians from around the region. So that was exciting. Auditions started this week for the Lamplighters production of Willy Wonka. That's going to perform in April. And the Spanish National Honor Society is preparing for the Poetry Out Loud contest. That's going to be on January 24th, and with students from the language classes from JFK and Enfield High participating. And I think that's all for me.
Thank you, Matt. Daniel, sorry.
Well, since Matt took all the good stuff, I guess I'll just give you guys an update on the Community Action Learning class going on right now and some Career Center news. So Community Action Learning, we organized a badminton tournament for today and tomorrow. Tomorrow the finals, and then our final delivery, because it's a semester-long class, is January 15th at 1 p.m. for the Teen Center down the street. And we were able to raise over $1,500 for them, so we bought them a lot of sports equipment and stuff like that. And then for the Career Center, on February 13th, they have an IT/computer sciences panel. So that's definitely going to be interesting, and they definitely have some interesting field trips coming up.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Drezig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just a reminder that all Enfield Public Schools and offices will be closed on Monday, January 21st for observation of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Schools and activities will resume on Tuesday, January 22nd. And there is a list of January events outlined in your packet, and that concludes the superintendent's report.
Any questions for the superintendent? Okay, moving on. Audiences? We have none. Board member comments? Ms. Hernandez, you have none? Mr. Ryder?
I'll be brief. Eli Whitney, we have dinner and a demo, karate night, karate demonstration and a free dinner. It's a fundraiser with Integrity Martial Arts at Eli Whitney, Thursday, January 17th. On Monday, the 28th of January, there's the Eli Whitney Chorus concert in the all-purpose room. And then Friday, February 8th will be the Snowflake Social. There's additional details on that event coming home soon to all the Eli Whitney families. And my last note for this week, wearing my EnfieldPTO.com hat, I wanted to thank all of the 10 schools in Enfield Public School System because the Thursday or Friday before we went away for December break, we had PJ Day for CCMC on Friday, the 14th of December. And Thursday or Friday before break, we got all the totals from all the schools, and we were able to send a check down to CCMC on behalf of Enfield Public Schools for $4,172.25. We were one of the top 5 fundraisers as a district in the entire state of Connecticut. 2 of the groups above us were Aetna and Dunkin' Donuts of Connecticut, which as corporate donors, we may not have been able to top them. And then as far as school systems, school districts in the state of Connecticut, we were the 3rd highest fundraising total of all school districts in the state of Connecticut. So I wanted to thank all of the students and all of the principals, all the administrators who helped us count the money, and I was very proud of our community. And we hope to make this an annual event going forward as a district, not just as an individual school. So thank you again to all the kids at Enfield Public Schools. Thank you.
Mr. Neville, you have any comments?
No, I as unusual as it is, I have no comments this time. And at this point, I'm going to hang up, Mr. Krizel. I want to watch the presentation of the budget on TV and the delay.
Okay, and I'll call you.
Gets in the way. Call me if you need me.
I'll call you when we get done.
Part of this, okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye.
Mr. Renier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tomorrow night for Enfield High School, there is a alumni wrestling match. Not the alumni wrestling match, alumni night for the wrestling match. Enfield Eagles are going against Rockville. That starts at 5:30, and like I said, it's an alumni night, and they'll be honoring the coach who is retiring. And that would be all of the Falcons and Raiders and Eagles coming back to the nest to one last night. January 9th, Hazardville Memorial School, which is tomorrow, has a PTO meeting at 6 p.m. January 16th, Hazardville Memorial, Integrity Martial Arts and a dinner and a demo presentation starting at 6 p.m., and that's going to be at Eli Whitney School. January 18th, which is one of the most monumental days in the world. That is the last day of Hazardville Memorial, and anyone else who wants to get on it for their fundraiser for Little Caesars. So if anyone has any plans for the big game on the big day, they can order some pizzas and have that delivered just in time for the big game. And at this point, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renier. Mr. Poe?
Enfield Street Schools PTO is also having their meeting on January 10th at 5:30 in the library. So be sure to attend that if you're interested in participating in the PTO. In case you're a procrastinator and January 18th doesn't cut it, Enfield Street Schools Little Caesars fundraiser ends January 22nd. So if you miss the Hazardville cutoff, you can still get pizza from Enfield Street. And I think Mrs. Riley has some comments planned for tonight that are pretty much the same thing that I might have said, so I'll let her take care of it.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Mr. Rutledge.
Good evening. Well, as this is our first meeting of the new year, Happy New Year to everyone. One other thing going on at the high school, there are some program of study sessions during Eagle Block this Thursday and Friday, where students can get more information about the various course offerings and programs available at the high school. On to a couple other matters that are coming up. I know tonight we've got the budget presentation, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. Mr. Dresnick, I know you did a fantastic job last year with that, keeping our budget very reasonable. And, just in the interest of communication, we all know this is going to be a process. And I just like, the public to remember there's probably going to be information sessions, and there's other things to really take into consideration. When people talk about our budget, when I talk to constituents, they ask a number of questions. And one thing, we have to explain, we have our MBR requirements that, impact our budgeting. We have the CREC issues, the CREC tuition that's been taking, millions of dollars away from Enfield schools for quite a few years. We also have to be very conscious about things that are coming down from the state. I know we have a new administration, and hopefully, the state starts taking a turn for the better, but a lot of us, we still remember what happened back in 2017 when we almost got really hit on our budget, and fortunately the town was able to pull us out of the fire. To the chairman, I know last year you had the standing invitation to former Governor Malloy to come visit us. Obviously, that never happened. But I think you would.
Comments. You stole my comment again.
I'm sorry. You're going to keep me in the loop on this one. But along the same lines, I think it would definitely behoove everybody if we, granted the new session doesn't start till tomorrow, but it would behoove us all if we could send invitations out early to our legislative delegation. Senator Kissel and Representatives Arnone and Hall to keep us up to date on, what's coming down from the state. How are the things like gas taxes and tolls and through the rumor mill hearing about teacher pensions potentially being shifted back to the towns. How are those things going to impact our ability to properly fund education and give our students, the education they deserve? So, I think communication in that realm is going to be key. And as long as we have all the information, I think we can make this budget process very smooth for the upcoming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rutledge. Ms. Riley.
Okay, I have a few. So I know we have the budget tonight, but there's some things I really wanted to get out there off my chest and going now that the holidays are over. It's a new year. Let's try something else. So I'm going to be as quick as I can be. First, I wanted to say the new math curriculum. let me just say, wow. Now, granted, I only have a second grader and a pre-K, but my second grader has already brought home worksheets with new math problems on it. I know we're going to get an official presentation here sometime soon, but let me just say, I'm seeing it in action and I am super excited. Our students are learning how to ask the right questions to effectively solve the problem, not just memorize some things for a test. I love it and I cannot wait to see more of it. So excited. My second point, test scores. I heard it mentioned last night at the town council meeting by a member of the audience, and I don't think that it was an accurate representation of our current achievement. So we need to get those scores out there from data from here and now, not some outdated site or wherever they're coming from. I know we had originally gotten some test scores with the curriculum committee a few months ago, but they had to be recalled because the state made errors with them. I did ask, and I was advised that in the next few weeks, next few meetings, we'll have a presentation with our scores and the data. And I'm looking forward to seeing where we were, where we are, and where we're going to go, and how to progress forward. I just wanted to make sure that the correct information is going to be disseminated, because if even the state had the information incorrect, I don't know what's correct out there or whatever people are looking at. My third point is recess. I had a wonderful conversation starter with Mr. Drezick and Mr. Longy about what do we need to do to start the conversation, to start exploring the viability of extra or elongated recess. I did not know how much really went into the whole rescheduling, coverage, prep times, contracts, et cetera, that goes into that. However, what did result was something that I think that we should really get into to help shape the culture of learning here. They call that active learning. The kids are up, moving to stations, actively participating, moving around while getting their lessons done. Also, some teachers have done alternative seating, allowing freedom of seating in different types of seating situations to allow for better focus. I hear that these teachers are having good results, so I was hoping that through the chairman to the superintendent, that if some of the teachers that are using this with success and are comfortable with coming to the board and they're willing to speak about it, I think that would be great, and I would love to have them here. Maybe we can effectively help a culture shift here and through curriculum to get more active learning going on, especially if it has positive outcomes, can aid in focus, retention, and aids in maybe their 1, 2, and 3 tier interventions. So maybe we could even get some PD talks to the teachers if we get lucky about how to incorporate that into the regular lessons. So I'm excited to hopefully see what we can do with that. And then the last thing, since we're going to talk about the budget tonight, I wanted to bring up a few budget points to keep in mind when the superintendent's giving his presentation. I brought some of it up during the public presentation last year, but I think it's worth saying every single time we talk about the budget. So I'm sorry, Mr. Drezick, if I'm going to take any of your thunder right now, but I just want to kind of get the point across. My first point is about the CREC magnet schools. All the taxpayers in this town effectively foot the bill twice for CREC, because first you're going to pay your state taxes, and some of that goes to CREC, and then when the bill comes to us in Enfield to pay the tuition for the students in our district that go there to the CREC schools. The cost of their tuition has been increasing steadily, and they don't even tell us how much it's going to cost us until after we come up with our budget. So at this point, whatever's been budgeted in the presentation he's going to give, we don't even know. It's just an estimate. And there have been rumors about it going up, so we have to be prepared for that. Another point is alliance districts. There's 33 alliance districts in our state. We are not on that list. However, we do get compared test-wise to those districts within our demographic group. And I think all but 2 districts, you could correct me if I'm wrong, are in our demographic group that are alliance districts. And so you're saying, well, why is this important? It's because they get additional money and support from the state that the alliance groups don't. And with the new educational cost sharing formula that they put out, and to be implemented fiscal year 19, if another big decrease happens like last year, all the alliance districts are going to be permanently held harmless, and their funding can't go below their fiscal year 17 amounts that they got. But we'll get whatever we get. And then the new educational cost sharing formula is scheduled to begin this fiscal year 19 and to be phased in over 10 years. It only applies to local public schools and not any other types of Connecticut public schools like magnet schools, schools that come over Sheff and O'Neill. So with declining revenues, continued growth of fixed costs, and the looming unfunded pension obligations that are going to stress the state's finances, that could cause large deficits, and then the state could resort to not fully funding us again. So that's another thing to think of. I have only 2 more points, so I promise I'm going to go quick. The excess cost grant, which reimburses districts when expenditures for special education students are 4.5 times greater than the district spending per pupil. Enfield, we have a pretty decent sized special education population. It's 17 or 18%, I think I remember. And in 2018, it was not fully funded. It was only funded at 73%. And as a result, we did not get back all of the money that we were eligible to receive. And then Chris brought up the minimum budget requirement. We can't go under what we've already spent and put aside for education, because if we do, then the state can withhold the money that they're going to give us anyways. So those are just some things I wanted you to remember while the whole budget process goes along. We have a lot of unknowns and things that we have to fit in to what we already want to do for our schools. But that's it.
Anything for Henry Barnard?
Henry Barnard, PTO met tonight. They're looking for people to be on a dance committee, a special persons dance committee, and we are going to do Spirit Week in February. And we're going to see if maybe we can coordinate that with Prudence Crandall. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. So I'll start with Crandall. This Friday is at 6 p.m. is their family fun night, and next Tuesday at 6:30 is their PTO meeting in the library. So any parents or from that school, please feel free to go to these meetings. I will continue on what Mr. Rutledge started. That chair was reserved for our departing governor. My predecessor sent him invitations. I sent him invitations, and we got nothing. So I will start invitations with our new governor as soon as he's sworn in tomorrow. Let him familiarize himself with Enfield, because I don't know if he's ever even been up here yet. So he has.
Yeah.
Okay. So he has. Okay. So we need to get him in that hot chair, that hot seat, I should say. Is what remembering that the state has to remember that K through 12 is what should be funded, not higher education. That's per constitution regulation, state constitution regulations. K through 12 education should be funded from the state. So just reminding him of that. Echoing on Mr. Neville with Mr. Rippish, I've worked with him since the beginning of the high school building committee, and the gentleman just, anything you needed, anything. I think I owe him breakfast. Sorry, and I missed. I think I owed him breakfast. So it's a big loss for the town. I already had work for him at the JFK, so he will be missed. So. And then last night at our council meeting, I'm going to pull some famous quotes. One is, well, there you go again. It was mentioned how the annex could possibly be used, and I'm not using the 6th letter of the alphabet. I'm not even using the letter anymore. I'm going to say the 6th letter of the alphabet. I'm not using that word. That the annex could be used as swing space for the JFK. Well, I'm going to do another quote from the 80s. Read my lips. The annex cannot be a school. It has been turned over to the town. There's been a letter sent to the state saying that it will not be used as a school anymore. if it does come back to being a school, there's a lot of ADA compliant issues that we have to have done. So I just want to put that out there, that we have to put that 6th letter of the alphabet to bed, finally, done. Cannot be used, period. And with that, I'll leave it at that. So we're at number 10, unfinished business. BOE policy approval 4000 series, first section, second reading. Mr. Renier.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The Board of Education, the 9 of us, last meeting, read through the first section for first reading. Today would be the second reading of that first section for final approval for that to be taken effect.
So do I have a motion to approve 4000 series first section? Moved by Mr. Rutledge, seconded by Mr. Poe. Any discussion? Sensing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Hernandez.
Yes.
Mr. Ryder.
Approved.
Mrs. DePoe.
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge.
Yes.
Mrs. Riley.
4.
Mr. Renier.
Yes.
Chairman Cruzel.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
New business.
So, yeah, number 12, do we go to now? Or?
11.
Sure, not a problem.
Number 11, Superintendent's Fiscal Year 2019-2020 Budget Presentation, or as what we call the Budget Show. Mr. Drezek.
I really don't need to say anything. I think Ms. Riley covered it all.
All right.
Sorry, I stole your thunder.
For this to come, oh, I need a microphone, huh? Can you hear me? We okay down there, Comey? Well, got a thumbs up. We're ready to go.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to first off start by apologizing that this is the one time a year where I'm forced to talk for a long period of time. I try to make a habit of having guests come that speak on our behalf, but unfortunately this is one of the things I signed up for the job. So I promised the guys in ETV I would try to be as quick as I can, but as you're going to find out very shortly, it's impossible with a district this size and everything that we've been able to do in the last 12 months. So starting this budget process, I'm going to start with the slide that we start with every presentation that we do district-wide. And that's for a reminder as to who we are and what we do. And the slogan underneath, that was also a byproduct of what this board and all of us accomplished last year. That we make a difference in Enfield, every child, every day. I didn't create this. Andy didn't create this. This was created organically from our staff all the way up through the food chain where we ultimately brought it to you. And though you didn't have to take a formal vote on it, we've got your approval of, does this represent who we are? If you learn nothing over the next, we don't know how many minutes yet, I want you to take away from this whole presentation or show or whatever it is that you call it, that every decision that I'm required to make, that this is at the root of it. There's a lot of hard decisions that we're going to need to make. There are a lot of decisions that aren't so hard to make. There's some that you may not agree with. But at the end of the day, every decision that we make as an administration and I make as your superintendent, I make it with that reference to making sure that we're continually making a difference for every child in this town every single day. So let's start the show. The first area that we always like to address are our accomplishments. Now, these aren't my accomplishments. These are our accomplishments. These are your accomplishments. Remember, I work for you. A lot of the things that we do and accomplish in this community are what we bring to you, and you give us the authority or the support to actually enact. These are also the accomplishments that our community needs to recognize. So we think of them as accomplishments and things that we achieve throughout the year. But it's also important to note, for those who maybe aren't as familiar with what we do here, that this is actually what the taxpayers in town have to know. Where's their money going? We gave you $70 million. What are you doing with it? So I'm going to try and make every attempt in what I've asked all of our administrators to do is, as you'll see when you get the materials when I'm done, everybody puts forth their accomplishments from the previous year. I ask every principal or administrator per department, give me your top 3, and if you had the opportunity to present in front of the board, what's your top 1 that you would want me to say? So I'm going to try to just use one. I'm not going to read every slide to you. I'm going to go through them as quickly as I can. Obviously, there's some departments that are larger than others, so I'll have to talk a little bit more in depth about some of them, but I'm going to start with our largest, and that's Enfield High School. And I'm going to start with the very first bullet point, that the Enfield High School graduation rate improved from 87.5% in 2016-2017 to 91.6% in 2017-2018. If I were to just stop here, that's a reminder of what we're here for. Now, is it perfect? No, it's not at 100%. But that's something that all of us should be extremely proud of what we've done. Because at the end of the day, if you look at that picture, for any kid that walks into Enfield High, the one thing that we're focused on is getting that child walking across that stage, shaking that gentleman's hand, and getting their diploma. So the folks at Enfield High School should be commended for the work they did over last year to improve that rate. It was what Ms. Riley referenced, test scores. This was something that was part of that embargo that we necessarily couldn't share publicly, that you will at some point in the coming weeks. We finally got the okay to start bringing this information out publicly, and then we hit the holiday break, so we do have it planned for presentations to come to all of you with all of our test scores, but this is something that I didn't want to do this process without bringing to your attention. I also want to talk about what's the second bullet on here, and that's the successful completion of the NES&C self-study. Now, some of you remember earlier in December, we had the visiting team from NEAS come and do the visiting portion of the accreditation process at Enfield High School. But what was accomplished last year was Enfield High School had to complete the self-study in order to begin that phase of the process. That was an arduous task and a lot of work that went into putting that study together. And I want to make that reference to the NEAS accreditation visit because you're going to hear about that as we get further along in this process. Those are 2. Enfield High is going to get 1 more, and it's not self-serving because it has my title on it, but last year we started something called the Superintendent's Advisory Committee. And I say that because we may or may not have members of that committee in the room right now, Dan. But the reason that I wanted to put that on there was not to be self-serving in any way, but Ms. Clark and I came up with this idea last year that we were going to form a group of kids voluntarily that would have an opportunity to come to meet with her and I on a monthly basis, just so we can have a dialogue about what's on their mind. What do they like? What do they don't like? What are things that we can improve on? What happened organically through that process last year, and those of you will remember when I stood here 12 months ago, and some of the new initiatives that I requested to move forward were a direct result of talking to those kids every month. You guys can recall last year I asked for increasing FTEs so that we can add a video production course at Enfield High School. That wasn't my idea. That was theirs. We also added a new drama program over at Enfield High School as part of the curriculum. That wasn't my idea. That was theirs. I'm telling you that because it's going to be a familiar theme as we continue. JFK. As the chairman mentioned when we talked about Mr. Rippish and all the work he did in Enfield High School, it's also a reminder of and a thanks to the community for supporting a referendum this past November to reconstruct a brand new JFK Middle School so that all of our kids 6 to 12 will be in the most state-of-the-art buildings, in my opinion, in the state of Connecticut. There's also been some leadership changes at JFK, and I'm proud to announce that we are officially on the 10-day anniversary of Dr. Berrio serving as the principal of JFK Middle School. He had his first administrative council meeting today, and he survived, and he's still here, so the future is looking bright when it comes to JFK. So a lot of these accomplishments that happened at JFK obviously weren't on his watch, but we wanted to make sure he was a part of this. And the one thing that they really asked me to highlight was the amount of student philanthropy that happens at JFK. So whether it's events like the Turkey Trot, can drives for Enfield Food Shelf, Loaves and Fishes, Dress Down donations, and one of the big ones is the pancake breakfast that a lot of you partake in with the Rachel's Challenge Club over at St. Pat's prior to the holidays. A lot of these student-led charity organizations are something that JFK has a rich history with, and we're confident that those will continue under the leadership of Dr. Berrios. Another familiar theme, there's also a new leader at Prudence Crandall. And if there's any indication on whether or not a community likes their new principal, I'm going to ask you all to refer back to Twitter sometime around Halloween. And it was about a dozen staff members at Prudence Crandall who decided they could dress up for anything they wanted to for Halloween. And this year they decided to dress up as Principal Sills. So this is Principal Sills' first year, and you would think that he's been here for the last 10 years. He's given outstanding leadership to that building, and the culture of that building has changed dramatically in the short time that he's been here, and we couldn't be happier. But one of the things he asked me to share with the group is that under the auspice of reading, that we've increased the percentage, this was last year, of students scoring at or above the district benchmark on running records from 39% to 55% just from the fall to the spring alone. And I'm sure, given a year under his belt, I'm going to have to fight him for one bullet point next year, because Mr. Sills is also an extremely proud man, which makes another reason why we love him so much. Parkman. One of the things that the picture will look familiar to most of you is we just partake in the 5th time that Reads Across America came to Parkman, but since you guys all took that wasn't an accomplishment during last year. But one of the things that Principal Roman wanted me to share with you was that the PBIS TFI Tier 1 score of 87% at Parkman was successful at the building foundation of Tier 1 for PBIS supports all in year 1. Which is just going to build upon the PBIS district-wide initiative that we've had, that we instituted last year, and we'll hear more about that as we go forward. Eli Whitney. Once again, there's a leadership change. However, right now, you know, Ms. Miriam Dipple has agreed to fill in for us as the interim principal as we begin the search for a new principal of Eli Whitney this spring. But one of the things Ms. Dipple had the benefit of being at Eli Whitney last year, asked us to share that the Whitney students increased their reading levels as assessed by the running records from fall to the spring of 2018, with an overall improvement in grade 3 by 95%, grade 4 by 97%, and grade 5 by 98%. So we're laying a good foundation for whomever the next principal of that building will be. Henry Barnard, and I'm going to apologize because you guys know me well enough. I can't stand still, and I have to stand when I do this, and ETV is going to shake the camera. For those of you who are watching at home, focus on the slides, not me. Henry Barnard, we're going to hear about this in a little while as well, but one of the things Mr. Graham asked me to share was the creation of our SRBI multi-grade level transition classrooms to support students exhibiting social, emotional, and behavioral challenges. You guys can recall last year, sometime in the fall, I approached you about creating these transition rooms for our youngest learners that were coming in that weren't necessarily at a point where we needed to make a referral to special education. And in some cases, these kids just needed a timeout. They needed a transition with the goal of getting those kids back into their regular education classroom. We started that at the 3 primary schools. We continued that, obviously, into this year. We're going to talk about that more later. But that was really one of the highlights that Mr. Graham wanted us to move forward with Henry Barnard. Enfield Street School. Surprise, we have a new leader at Enfield Street School, Mr. Lord, who has been doing an outstanding job in the short period of time that he's been here as well. One of the things that wasn't under his watch that he really wanted to emphasize was the creation and implementation of Tier 1 school-wide positive behavioral interventions and supports, which is going to sound like a reoccurring theme. As you know, last year we instituted PBIS district-wide, and this is really showing the fruits of our labor of putting that program in place throughout the district. Hazardville Memorial. Mrs. Hunter asked that we express to you that they've expanded their school-wide positive behavior intervention program to meet the social emotional needs of students and to increase academic readiness. So when you talk, the one thing that is a relief to me as we get to, well, that was our last elementary school, is when we bring all of our principals in to talk about their accomplishments and their needs for the following year, for the first time, for those of us who have been here for a while, you're not getting 6 different presentations. Everybody's on the same page. We're all doing the same thing. We're all talking a like language. And that's one of the directions we've tried to bring this district over the last several years. Now we're on to, and I quote, a high-ranking state official in the Office of Early Childhood who I'm not allowed to use their name. The Stowe Early Learning Center is the foundation for what early education programs should be, and the town of Enfield should be extremely proud and should show this place off more than they do. If anyone hasn't had the opportunity yet, under the direction of Jacqueline Valley, who is not just the nicest person you're ever going to meet, who's done an outstanding job as being the director over at Stowe, as she refers to, if you ever have an opportunity to really find out the foundations of what we're doing, you go over and see these. I can't call them kids. I have to reference what Ms. Valley calls them, and she refers to them as her tiny humans. But there's a lot of things we can talk about that happened at Stowe, but if she had to pick just one, we've talked about the accreditation process at Enfield High School that we're currently going through now. Well, Stowe went through that last year. Instead of NAS&C, it's called NIAC. And the Pre-K STEAM Academy hosted a successful NIAC site visit and received full accreditation. So we passed with bells and whistles, so much so that other districts are now coming to use our program as a model. And as I stated earlier, that high-ranking official in the Office of Early Childhood said that the Stowe Early Learning Center is the pillar for early education programs in the state of Connecticut. We also added an additional classroom. We went from 3 to 4. Excuse me. Trying not to cough, so I swallowed my lifesaver. So if I start coughing on you, it's that fault. Computer technology, K to 12. Our computer program pathway was integrated into kindergarten through grade 5 with computer technology courses. Why is this important? Prior to last year, we didn't offer computer classes to our kindergarten students. There was a discrepancy in scheduling that we weren't able to offer it. So starting last year, we were able to offer computer programming, computer classes for all of our kids, K to 12, get some sort of access to technology and computer classes. Our guidance department, again, under new leadership last year. Those of you remember Mrs. Ingalls, who was the former principal of Eli Whitney School. She took over as the guidance director for K to 12. And one of her first goals when she first took the role was she wanted to increase the outreach that she had through the guidance department with parents, whether it's using social media accounts, whether it's using different type of school-wise events, increasing the amount of scholarships and partnerships that we have. And the way it was most evident was those of you who haven't had an opportunity yet, because a lot of you have smaller children, but at some point you're going to have to attend a college fair at Enfield High School. And if you've ever had the opportunity to see the college fair, it's a remarkable event that we host because we also bring in any other town that's willing to come. But I will tell you to plan on being there for a long time because it's packed. Last year alone, they were able to increase the amount of vendors at the college fair by 20. I don't know how we fit them in there, and I'm glad the fire marshal wasn't there. But it's in a first year of taking over a K-12 program, Mrs. Ingalls has done a phenomenal job. Our library services. We have a K-12 library department that sometimes when we talk about libraries, they get a little bit overlooked because we do so much interaction with our public libraries. But one of the things that our library services does coordinate is they coordinate a book study during the monthly. I'm sorry, that's not the one I wanted to tell you. I wanted to tell you about the Readers as Learners and Leaders grant. Inspired by the American Association of School Librarian Standards, created and implemented a grant from Target to reintroduce and energize 6th grade students' relationships with libraries. What I was beginning to mention was we've had a long-standing program that we continue here in Enfield. In the 3rd grade, every kid gets to go to the public library, get their library card, and we bus the kids over there. We want to create an environment where our kids are familiar with and embracing going to our library and fostering their love of reading. And a lot of that starts with our library services. Our music department. This is a tough one to give you one bullet point off, and as you know, we've had so many musical guests over the years, and Matt left, so I told him he was going to miss out on this. But our Enfield Music Department has done numerous performances for the community during the past year. And as you're well aware, because they came here and presented to us, select JFK and Enfield High School band students performed in Boston Symphony Hall in a gold medal showcase of ensembles that received the highest ratings at the MICCA Festival. You knew that already, but now this is a good reminder of just the talent that we have through our music department. PE. I'm so glad, Ms. Riley, that you remembered Brittany. So when I talked to Ms. Quirton, who's our district-wide PE and Health K-12 coordinator, and I asked her what was the one thing she wanted to talk about, the first thing she mentioned to me was, I was also relieved to hear, was you got to remind them about unified sports. Some of you will remember we had a presentation from our unified sports class last year. Mr. Ramos came, as well as we also had that same presentation for the town council. I want to take a step back. If you haven't had an opportunity to either see one of their events, have an opportunity to see some of these kids and some of the peers, but one of the things that we were recognized, that Enfield High School was named and recognized as an exemplary unified high school at the Michaels Cup banquet. In addition, 2 students were recognized by the CAAC for their contributions to the Enfield High School Unified Sports Program. You want to talk about making a difference? Go talk to those kids. Go talk to those families. That'll tell you everything you need to know. Our reading department. The reading department did a literacy boosting work, created and supported many local programs, some of which you are all familiar with. Our One Book, 3 Schools, 1 Community, the Heritage Fair, the Play Committee, the United Way Readers, a variety of book fairs, the Public Library Summer Reading, the Enfield High and JFK Summer Reading, Enfield Gets Ready for Kindergarten, Links to the Libraries, DIA, and KITE. This is all work that comes out of our K-12 reading department under the guidance of our K-12 reading coordinator. Special education. This is the time of year when we talk about special education the most. And to me, it's unfortunate because, yes, talk about what the elephant in the room are. Special education costs a lot. But when you take a look at what we're actually producing for our kids and the needs that our kids have and the goals that we're meeting with our kids, it frustrates me to talk about special education because it's always linked to why does it cost so much. Well, I'm going to tell you. Last year, the Enfield Public Schools earned the Connecticut State Department of Education's highest rating of meets requirements for compliance indicators identified in the district annual performance report. So you want to talk about test scores? I don't know where you guys are hearing some of this stuff from. I can only deal with what I hear. But just that bullet point alone answers the question, in my opinion, for those in the community who ask, why do we spend so much on special education in town? We do it because we're seeing the results. At the end of the day, our kids are meeting or exceeding expectations in special education. This is not common. We are not one of 100 districts to reach this level of achievement. But we were able to reach this level of achievement because we've put the investment in. Not me, you. I come to you guys with ideas that cost money. I need your support in order to implement it. What you guys are doing by supporting these initiatives is you're making an investment. And now we're starting to see the payoff of the investment that you guys put forward. I also wanted to pick out another, and this is another area I can talk about all night, and at some point we can come and have another presentation by the people who know this stuff much better than I do. But one thing I wanted to stress is if you look at the bottom bullet point, that over 93% of our grade 12 students receiving social work services graduated from Enfield High School in 2017 and 2018. 12 months ago, I stood in front of you guys and told you we needed to hire another social worker. That's why. So when you ask the question, where's your money going? That's where it's going. I'll take you to the first bullet point from Enfield High School. Why are we here? We're here to make sure that those kids walk across that stage and they're ready for whatever world they choose to go in when they get there. Unfortunately, it takes resources to do it. But I think it's incumbent upon me and all of us to tell whoever's watching and whoever's in the audience, this is where your money's going and this is what you're getting for it. And this will all be in your packet, so that's why I'm choosing not to read all this. Visual arts, K-12. Again, another leadership change. This time we were very extremely fortunate to hire Chris Saccio as our new district-wide visual arts coordinator. One of the things that, if you haven't had an opportunity, I know some of you have because I saw you there last year, but every year we put on together in coordination with the Enfield Women's Club an art exhibit at Enfield High School. That's not just for Enfield High School students. That's K-12, and all the students' artwork is consolidated over to Enfield High School, where we have a 3-day art show over the weekend. It's Friday, Saturday, and it wraps up on a Sunday. I'm the person who can't paint a wall with a roller, so I'm always amazed at anyone who has any artistic abilities whatsoever. There weren't enough slides, and it took up too much memory to show the actual student artwork on here, because I think that is what tells the story better. But the level of talent that we have in this district will blow everyone's mind. And those of you who ever come to meetings in my office and Andy's office, what we've asked Chris to do was to put student artwork throughout our offices so we can display it a little better than we have. Having a new administrator overseeing the department who is extremely eager, we actually gave him the entire first floor of our Alcorn administrative wing, and gave him all the hallways and told him to go nuts and put all the artwork on there. The downside of that is every now and then Andy and I will see a blank, or a picture or something used to be on our wall, it's missing. So I think either somebody broke in and stole it, or we did something to break it. The reason it's not there is because Mr. Saccio has to remove it because he's about to submit it in some sort of competition, or one of our students has won an award because of the artwork. So if you ever see a bunch of artwork and then there's a piece missing, that just meant that kid was that good and that kid's winning an award for it. But if you get an opportunity in the spring to go to the Arts Festival, I highly recommend everybody get an opportunity to do that. Athletics, again, another area that you guys are familiar with because 3 times a year we're able to bring our award ceremony in front of you. Now this is an area that people sometimes forget, that during this school year that we're talking about, we were only 2 years removed from a merger of 2 small high schools into one very large Class L high school. And I think the expectations were that we were going to win every game we played because now we're one big high school. Well, we're also competing against high schools that are been that big forever. However, that said, the level of success that we've had in our athletic programs in such a short period of time has exceeded my expectations before we've ever gone in this. Now, I know it doesn't necessarily exceed the expectations of certain elected officials, not mentioning anyone's name, Mayor Mike, who expects state championships in every sport, every season. But that said, what I'm more proud of is every year for the last 2 years and every season, our kids have been recognized in multiple different sports for an award that's more important than a state title, but that's a sportsmanship award. And you heard it last week when we had our fall kids come at the last board meeting, that voted on by their peers, by other coaches, and by officials. The Enfield kids are representing us the way that we would expect them to. The thing that I'm most proud of, no matter how many awards that we win, no matter how many banners we're going to put up, is the thing in the middle of your screen, which says 96% of our student athletes maintain their academic eligibility. We can't forget these are students. Now, some students use athletics as a means of motivation to increase their academics, which I'm fine with. But at the end of the day, these kids can't compete on the fields or on the courts if they're not maintaining their academic status. 96% of our kids did. And it didn't hurt that we had 66 CC all-conference recognitions last year, as well as 2 Connecticut Player of the Year recognitions. I'm going to add one more for athletics, and I want to reference the picture on the bottom of your screen. When I first took over as superintendent, and my mind was all in a million different places about making sure we had everything intact for the first day of school, we got to about August, and I realized the question that I received the most in 2 months was, what are we going to do with the banners at Fermi? So it wasn't about math or science. Everyone wanted to know, what am I doing with these banners? So a lot of you were there. If you weren't able to be with us at the initial ribbon cutting, you've been there since. But we created what's called the Hall of Champions at Enfield High School that recognized the champions from both Enfield High School and from Fermi High School. So that main grand hallway at Enfield High School now, and there's a picture of it, and I welcome anyone to come and take a look at it, is a culmination of our past. But when you go into the actual main gym, that's the future of Enfield. There's only Eagles allowed in there. All of this vision was not mine. And if you haven't noticed over the past 2 years, the level of professionalism and sportsmanship and the way that we represent ourselves from our athletic department is a direct reflection of our athletic director, Corey O'Connell, who you guys have seen multiple times here. And I just want to use this opportunity again to thank him for all the work that he's done. Our business department, coincidentally another department that Mr. O'Connell oversees. I want to focus on the first bullet point here, which is reference to the Connecticut Career and Technical Education Concentrators. So in business, in areas of business and family consumer science, that's the standardized test for those pathways. And in our business for 7 to 12, last year, 95% of our students successfully completed their selected pathway for that school year. So 43 kids who went on that track and took those tests and those exams, 41 of those kids passed that. That's a 95% success rate in the area of business. And again, that's the concentrate. That's the SAT, that's the DRP of the business world when it comes to business education, as well as family consumer science, and we'll get to that in a moment. Our English department, when we talk about test scores, 67% of our students scored a 3 or 4 in the evidence-based reading and writing portion of the SAT. Why is that significant? Ms. Riley also stole a little bit of my thunder with the explanation of what our DIRG is. We are currently in DIRG F. And in our DIRG, that would place us in first place. So all those alliance districts that we'll talk about in a moment, our kids at Enfield High School ranked #1 in a DIRG and the SAT for our evidence-based reading and writing portion of the test. Talked about CTE earlier. Same rules apply for family consumer science. 95% was good, 100% is better. 64 of our 64 kids who took the CTE concentrators in their selected areas passed. Again, I want to remind you that a number of years ago when we first consolidated the high school, it wasn't me, but it was Dr. Schumann stood in front of the board and said, we need to increase our resources because we want to build our family consumer science program at the high school with the addition of our culinary arts program and in addition of all the other programs that would fall underneath that. It takes a little time. But now you ask, what did we do with those resources that were given to us a number of years ago? That's it. You want to think you made a difference? You made a heck of a difference for 64 kids who are going to choose that as their career pathway. Mathematics. Once again, Mrs. Riley stole my thunder a little bit, but that's okay. I wasn't planning on saying much about mathematics because, again, we have a leadership change in that department as well. Those of you who are on the curriculum committee had an opportunity to see our new K-12 district math coordinator, Jay LaMesa. The reason why I'm choosing to not say much about that is because the one directive that we gave to Mr. LaMesa and Dr. Wiley when there was a leadership change is that position wasn't always K-12. That was a 6-12 position. If you remember last year, we recreated that position to be K-12. And one of the things that we asked of Jay and Carrie was, we need a vision for the entire district in the continuum of K-12 for mathematics. And within a month, Jay had it down as well as with Carrie's help, and he presented that to the curriculum committee. And when he first presented it to us, we looked at each other and said, we got to get you in front of the board because now it'll all make sense. So I'm going to save a little bit of what I was going to talk about with math because in the very near future, you're going to get a presentation, most likely at the next meeting from Mr. LaMesa on our K-12 district math vision. Our sciences. 109 students took an AP science exam and earned up to 8 college credits as part of our UConn Early College Experience program. I don't know if any of you have ever taken an AP exam, but for 100, I don't know if you've ever taken an AP exam. I don't know if you've ever taken an AP science exam. These are highly motivated kids. We had 109 of them. That's also important because if you recall a number of years ago, we didn't have as many AP offerings as we currently do now. But one of the things that we noticed was there was a discrepancy amongst the amount of kids who were taking the AP test or taking the AP courses but weren't actually sitting for the exam. And the root of it was there's a cost. It costs money to take the exam. So several years ago, the Board of Education made a commitment that any kid who was going to take an AP course, the district was going to foot the bill for the exam. So you want to talk about where your resources are going and how you're helping? Those are the 109 kids who took that exam because you offered to pay for it. And I want to just go down one more slide when it comes down to science. We have classes and electives at Enfield High School unlike any other school that I can come across within our region. And one of the courses that we're real proud of is our forensics. And our forensic teachers developed the mock crime scene, engage students in authentic performance investigations. It's like real CSI stuff. I want to draw attention to the picture. You probably can't see it from where you are. But the top of the picture, they're standing in front of the Henry Lee Institute of Forensic Science. And in the very first, the guy in the suit is the infamous Dr. Henry Lee. Yeah, the OJ guy. The guy who's responsible for essentially being the godfather of forensic science. Surrounded by Dr. Henry Lee are our Enfield High School students. Not only do they get an opportunity to go down to the University of New Haven and partake in events down there, they got an opportunity to spend time with Dr. Lee. But that's because we're in a position where we offer the types of electives that our kids can take and have those experiences. Social studies. It's another area that you're familiar with because we're constantly bringing them in front of you because they keep winning things. The Enfield Public Schools was again recognized as a red, white, and blue school district in the second annual Red, White, and Blue Schools. You try saying it a couple times in a row. Launched by the Connecticut Commissioner of Education and the Secretary of State. And that encompasses what we do with our Youth Vote program. That encompasses what we do with our Meet the Candidates night. That also encompasses what the picture is on the bottom. And that's a result of the Red, White, and Blue initiative where our kids for the first time 2 years ago applied to compete in the Kid Governor's race. And as a fallback from that, Mr. Sine, who we'll see in a couple of pictures down the road, came to us with an idea that in the event our Enfield student wasn't chosen as the kid governor, would we be interested in naming that kid as the kid mayor? So you can see the picture. That's our new kid mayor, Olivia Nucio. And I think she does a better job outshining our actual adult mayor. I'd be remiss if, and this isn't really affecting the budget, but I'm just so proud of our Teacher of the Year that I wanted to make sure we included him, and he does work in that department, so it's another reminder that our current Enfield Teacher of the Year is Tony Allegro. Tech and vocational education, 7 to 12. This is the area of Mr. Daig. Again, this is a presentation all on its own, so I'm going to do my best to summarize what it is that he wants us to would want me to portray for you. So we had a successful implementation of our grade 7 STEAM engineering and computer science programs through Project Lead the Way at JFK. The program helps students develop systematic thinking skills as well as apply math, science, engineering practices to solve real-world problems. Why is this important? The key word is we brought it down to JFK. So these weren't just programs that we're offering at the high school. These are things that we're already initiating down at JFK. I also want to highlight that we have 12 students that participated in the College Connections dual enrollment program at Asnuntuck. These students earn credit towards high school graduation, as well as credit towards an associate's degree or certificate in machining technology and welding technology at Asnuntuck. Our kids are getting credit toward their associate's degree before they walk across that stage at Asnuntuck. I'm telling you this now because that number 12 is probably going to drastically increase next year with the implementation of our EMT course, which is currently sold out, as Mr. Daig likes to put it. But again, I ask you, the things you're asking for, where are the resources going, and are those resources making a difference? You can bet those 12 kids are getting a difference because of the decisions that you guys make at this dais. World languages. Again, on the subject of advanced placement tests, 89% of our students who took the AP Spanish or French language and culture exam passed. I don't think I can even read the exam, let alone pass it, but we had 87% of our kids who took it passed it. The reason they took the class and passed the exam is, again, going back to the investment that you made into making sure any kid who was willing to take this course would have the opportunity to sit for the exam. There's also something that I wanted to highlight through our World Language Department in coordination with the state of Connecticut. We were approached about a program that the state was running called the Connecticut Seal of Biliteracy. And what that means is if students meet certain requirements, that they can actually receive an additional seal on their high school diploma if they meet the requirements for the Seal of Biliteracy program. 23 of our students qualified for this and actually got their diplomas with the additional seal on it. Again, not something that we would have been able to do if we didn't have the support in order to make them happen. Everything that I just told you will start in this area. So any of the accomplishments that we make in the buildings, that we make in the programs, will start in our academics and curriculum department. So you'll see the successful implementation of a K-8 STEAM engineering and computer science pathways, the expansion of those AP offerings from 14 to 17 during that school year, and the addition that we're able to fund those. All of this is originated through our academics and our curriculum office. The Invention Convention. I want to make sure that we highlight this because last year we had 109 students partake in the Invention Convention. 20 of those students qualified for the Connecticut Invention Convention regional competition, with 15 moving on to the state finals at the University of Connecticut, and 6 Enfield students went all the way to Detroit, Michigan and competed in the National Invention Convention finals. They don't do that without the support and the resources that we're asking for and the support that you guys have given these students. PBIS, again, district-wide initiative. It's all generated out of our curriculum office, as well as the implementation of Reader's Workshop for grades K to 12. All of our professional development, district-wide, is coordinated and run through our academic office. We can't do all of that for 5,200 kids without the necessary resources that we have in our academic office. District-wide instruction. I talked about this when we mentioned the primary schools. This is where our transition classes come into play. And as a quick reminder for those of you who maybe don't remember, at sometime in the fall last year when I approached you, we were having you were getting some calls from constituents as I was getting calls from parents about kids that were coming in that just didn't seem like they were academically or behaviorally ready to participate, whether it be in kindergarten or first grade. And I commend you guys for letting me do it, because we pulled it off in the middle of the school year, and last year through the budget process we were able to support it again for this current school year. But the origin of this program, this is where it falls when you look at your budget book, but this is where the initiatives come from. And without, again, that support from you guys, we can't continue with programs like this. The last thing under district-wide administration is the first bullet. It's the completion of classroom presentation tools in elementary classrooms. That's a fancy way of saying we got monitors in our elementary schools. I mention that because over the summer I got a call from someone who will remain nameless and may or may not be in the room and said, "Are you putting big screen TVs in the elementary schools?" And I chuckled because, and he'll attest to it, that when Guy first brought this project to me, I said, you know, I'm going to get a phone call from someone saying, why are we putting big screen TVs in the elementary classrooms? We didn't put big screen TVs in elementary classrooms. What we did was, as you know, all of our elementary classrooms are outfitted with projectors like the one that's up here in the ceiling and some sort of whiteboard or smartboard in the classroom. Well, in order for those projectors to work, they need two things. They need a bulb and they need power. The challenge on the bulb is one bulb for one of those, and I don't want to speak on the town's behalf because I don't know if they have the same antiquated ones we have, but one bulb for a projector is $350. And they last about a year. So every year we get requests for bulbs because the teachers aren't able to use any of their presentation materials because they don't have a bulb that works. The other issue is every single year since I've been here, our elementary principals, their budget request is, we want to mount all of our projectors to the ceiling. And every year we get a quote for it, and every year it goes up, and it starts my first year here at about $300,000. It's worked its way all the way up to about a $500,000 project to mount all of these projectors to the ceiling. So, again, I can't take credit for this. Guy did his research and said, you realize for what we pay for a bulb, we can mount a monitor and have a Apple TV that goes along with it. And the benefit of that, as I mentioned the second part, you need power. So instead of giving them the $500,000 to mount them, we gave them all extension cords. And said plug them into the wall, and they're running the extension cords with tape under rugs to the center of the classroom to where the projector is going to be. Well, apparently our fire marshals don't necessarily approve of that. And given that some things came to light over last school year, that was something that came to our attention. So again, all the credit on this goes to Guy, not me. Guy said, well, you know, for the same price of replacing these bulbs, we can start instituting monitors and Apple TVs in these rooms, which have a lifespan of more than a year than the current bulbs we have. They're indefinite. And the other benefit is it's all wireless, that the teachers can project from wherever they want, the kids can project from wherever they want, and we don't have to worry about the fire marshal shutting us down because we're running across extension cords like I'm doing right now. So that's what that means. I just thought this was an appropriate time for the community to know that we didn't buy big screen TVs for our elementary schools. I'm almost there. Transportation services. Last year was Smith Bus. People forget. Last year was the actual implementation year of our K-2 reorganization. We couldn't have done that without the help of Smith Bus with reorganizing all of our kids that were going from Nathan Hale into our other primary schools. So I want to take this opportunity to thank them. Nutrition services. I'm just going to go right to the bottom. Our lunch prices remain stable for yet another year. One of the best indicators of whether or not you're doing a good job in our line of work is what do you hear about us? And for years, to their defense, when we had a cafetorium at Enfield High School, we were getting weekly concerns about the level of food that we had, particularly at the high school. I don't want to jinx it, but I haven't heard anything about the quality of food since that new cafeteria is open, and we've been able to maintain the same prices, even though the quality of what we're offering to students has continued to increase. Okay, now is the part that you probably weren't looking forward to. That's what we did last year. It's real hard to make a district our size and put on a bunch of slides and give one bullet point, but to the best of my ability, I put together what I thought was our most important things, accomplishments that we all did over the last 12 months. Now we're going to get to what all this stuff cost us. And again, Ms. Riley stole my thunder a little bit, but we are in what we call the Demographic Reference Group F. And I'll lay that out in a minute on who else is in our group. But if you look at this chart, and we're going to start with Enfield, our per pupil expenditure for the 17-18 school year was $14,422. That's what it cost us to educate one kid in the Enfield Public Schools. If you compare us to our DIRG, which the state of Connecticut requires us to compare ourselves to, so when we compare ourselves on performance, we're required to compare ourselves against the state and against those in our DIRG. Our DIRG per pupil expenditure is $17,247. So as you can tell, like-sized districts, and again, our demographic reference group is made up of like districts, like social economic, size, enrollment, ability to pay, all that's rolled in there. Our peers are spending $3,000 per kid more than we are in Enfield. And what I just spent the last half hour going over for you guys, I'm pretty confident that those same districts aren't giving the results and the accomplishments that we just showed that you guys have been doing over the last 12 months. There is a caveat to the state number. Like everything else, the state's a little bit behind. So the 16.5 number for the state is actually the 16-17 number because they haven't released the 17-18 number yet. However, in all of our research, we found that everybody's per pupil expenditure has gone up, and the state is an average of that. So I'm fairly confident to tell you that that number is going to be around there, if not higher. The point is, we're still spending $2,000 less than the state average per pupil in the state of Connecticut. So the moral of the story is, we're doing pretty well for what we spend. Now, depending upon how you look at it, we either jump the spot or drop the spot. But when I gave you this chart last year, we were third from the bottom in per pupil expenditures when we compare against our other districts. We beat Plymouth. I don't know if that's good or bad, but we spend less than Plymouth now. So now we are the second lowest per pupil expenditure in our DIRG. We're hovering on Wolcott pretty soon, but as far as us and Wolcott, everyone else on that list is spending more money per kid than we are. And you were accurate, Ms. Riley, when you mentioned about the DIRG comparison. With the exception of us and one other district, all those other districts are what we refer to as alliance districts. So those are getting additional state funding that we're not being privy to from the state of Connecticut.
Mr. Judge, just for clarification for people at home, the DIRG letter reference is strictly random. That's not a grading system.
It's not a grading. No.
Just
we didn't
to be
get
clear for everybody.
We didn't get the 6th letter of the alphabet
Yes.
for those who are watching home. It starts with the it used to be called the economic reference group. That was a good catch. So obviously the A's were the Greenwiches and the New Canaans of the world, and then they would work their way down. They probably would be better served if they use numbers, but again, I don't control what they do down in Hartford. One of the things that often you hear sometimes, and there's a misconception of, well, you have a $71 million budget, you should be able to do what you want with. That's actually not true. We do have a $71 million appropriated budget as we speak, but we need more than that to actually run the district the way that we run it. And how we supplement that is with the additional grant funding that we bring in. So we get a $71 million appropriation from the town council, but we also take in close to $4 million in grants. Now, some of those are state and federal grants, but a lot of those are grants that we go off and procure ourselves. So instead of going, that's $4 million less than we have to ask the taxpayers and the town council of Enfield to fund, because we're either getting the grants through some sort of award process, or we're going out and actually competing and procuring those grants on our own. So we actually spend $75 million a year, at least last year, in order to run the district as it is right now. This is the process, otherwise referred to as the backwards process, and it's nobody in this room's fault. But we actually start this process in November. We reach out to all our administrators, we give them all the documentation, and we say, when I said earlier, they get pretty strict instructions from us. I don't want a wish list. I don't want a bunch of nice to haves. Tell me what you need. Now, I don't care how expensive it is. If you need it, I need to know about it, because then we have to make those tough decisions. So we start in November, and then we spent 2 days over December where we bring every department in, and every department presents to us over at central office, and we spend about 8 hours a day looking at all the different presentations. And that's not only where we get the fiscal request, but that's where we also have an opportunity to talk about the accomplishment and the needs moving forward. What's significant about this chart is here we are today on the 8th, where I'm presenting this to you. You guys basically have till February 20th, because by town charter, we have to submit our budget request to the town manager on no later than March 1st. Also by the charter, you'll notice that there are 2 meetings that you have to partake in with the town council. There's a budget workshop, and there's also the public hearing. Those usually take place in the March-April timeframe. The public hearing is set by charter, so that's usually sometime in the middle of April. At that point, we hope that between March and June, the council has an opportunity to review and adopt the budget, and then we'll come back together in June to summarize whatever the end result may be. Okay. So I told you everybody put their needs request in, and I had a decision to make. Do I go through them line by line with you right now, or do I just come out and tell you what everything totaled up? We'd be here a heck of a lot longer if I told you what all the needs are, so I made a decision to go with the latter. The bottom line is when all of our administrators put their numbers in and they submitted them to me, this is what the number that we came up with. If we honored every request that came in, I'd present to you guys a $76 million budget request, or 6.88%. Have a good night. Okay, I'm kidding, but that's where we would be if we wanted to honor every request that came through from our administration. Now, obviously, and we're going to get to this in a second, given the fiscal constraints that we've had here, we have some work to do. We didn't think it was in the best interest of the community. We didn't think it was in the best interest of the district to present a number that we really didn't feel was feasible at this point in time. So our work began. This is where I'm going to take a pause for a moment, and we're going to go down memory lane to an area I hope we never have to go again. And it was referenced earlier, and I don't recall if it was Mr. Rutledge or Ms. Riley who mentioned this, but I think it's a good reminder for those in the room, but more importantly for those watching at home, of the horror that we experienced last year from a fiscal standpoint. At one point, Enfield was on track to lose $26 million of funding per the governor's request. Ultimately, though we didn't receive that $26 million cut, the town of Enfield did receive a cut, not to education funding, but an overall cut to the town of Enfield's revenue of $4 million, which the town council, as a reminder, had every opportunity legally to take those funds and pass that reduction on to us. I also want to remind you that had the town council made that cut to education, which they had the right to do, that would have in actuality been more of an $8 million cut. Because if you recall, when we were actually notified, it was already midway through the year. And anything that we cut, we were getting 50 cents on the dollar for, because we already spent half of our money. We were halfway through the year. The council chose to hold the board harmless with these reductions. And for that, we are all extremely grateful for. I can't tell you how bad our system would have been decimated if we had to make a $4 million cut to the system in the middle of a year of that magnitude. And we wouldn't be talking about classes being not offered or programs being offered. We actually began looking at the closure of buildings. That's how dire the situation was. So we are all extremely appreciative of the ledge that the town council went out to make sure that we didn't have to go down this cliff. I also have to take the opportunity to remind everybody that last year the board requested a 1.85% increase from the council. And believe it or not, we've actually received more than that. We received a 2.3% budget increase, because by the time the state got their business in order and the money flowed down, it actually came in as required for the town to fund us higher than what we had actually asked for. Now, the 9 of you had a choice to make last June. And the choice was, we have this extra money. Do we just go and spend it and then hope that we can sustain it in future years? Or do we open a dialogue with the town council about planning beyond 12 months? Because right now we work in a 12-month world. We're only worried about next school year, and the year after that, we'll worry about it another time. We try to operate on long-term planning, but there's a lot of restraints that prohibit us from doing that. This was an opportunity for you and the 11 members of the council to begin a dialogue to talk about future and long-term planning, to which, to all of your credit, you decided to do it. And as a measure of good faith, during the process, we made a commitment to the council that if they didn't take $4 million away from us, that we would do our best to make sure that we managed our money appropriately, and anything that we got back, we would return. And if you recall, Mr. Krusell, you had a giant check that you actually handed back over to the town council, but the Board of Education, the 9 of you, returned over $100,000 back to the town council last summer. And what you did with that was the town council was then in a position where they were able to use that money to hire contractors to do a thorough cleaning of all our elementary schools. If you recall, at the time, our buildings and ground staff were cleaning one of our buildings. We're hoping that they would have the ability to do it all summer, but it was going to require additional funds. By you guys having that dialogue with the council and being open and transparent, they were able to readdress those funds and actually put it back in toward the schools. So the council didn't just take the money and put it into the general fund. They put them back into our schools, and for that, we're appreciative of it. The other result of those conversations were that both of you organizations decided that it was time that we both show some fiscal responsibility and continue these conversations, that as you know, that the state of Connecticut does allow us to carry over money from year to year. But we can't do it unless we have explicit permission from the town council. So when the council gives our appropriation resolution, it has to state that they're permitting the Board of Education to carry over up to 1% of their budget if it's available. Now in June, we didn't know what we were going to have. I mentioned the top two numbers because in years past, we didn't have $700,000. That's 1%. We don't have $700,000 left at the end of every fiscal year. But in this particular year, because we had taken in additional funding, we were almost there when it came to securing the extra money to have that cushion of a 1% to carry over into next year. So in this room, with all 20 of you on camera at some point over the summer, both bodies got together and they had a very open and friendly dialogue about when the time comes for the appropriation for this year, would the council permit us to carry money over in a contingency fund to help lessen the burden of what we would ask the council for moving forward. And though they couldn't take a formal vote at the time, there was an agreement that that was what was going to happen going forward for this year. So that's all being taken into consideration for what we're going to ask for going forward. I can't stop inflation. Things go up. You guys all have homes. You have lives outside of this place. I know, but I hope. Just like anything else, everything goes up. If I just take what we have right now and don't add anything new, I need a 1.45% increase. That's nothing new, nothing changed. That's our fixed cost number going forward. Now, of those initiatives that I mentioned that were requested of me, there are some that are included in my presentation and they're included in my request, but I wanted to take a moment to explain to you what they are. The first initiative that I'm going to support is an additional 0.5 clerical staff member at Henry Barnard. Some of you know we have 1.5 secretaries at all of our elementary schools, but you're also aware that the amount of volume, because of the additional program we have at Henry Barnard, really puts a burden on our office staff and our administration over there. This is a request that we are hoping to continue, and at this point, I feel it's in the best interest of the school and the community and that family to support the request of an additional part-time secretary staff member. And in essence, we would be making a part-time staff member full-time. So that's included in my request. We're going to add 2 new programs. And this is per, again, the hard work of our K-12 music director, Dr. Goodnight. So we're going to add a show choir and a chamber singer at Enfield High School. The good news is those are stipend positions and they're budget neutral. But they're still new initiatives that we're going to move forward. I'm able to support that because Dr. Goodnight has attested to Andy and I that she knows a number of kids who are interested in that and have expressed interest in that. And if we have an opportunity to give kids an a different extracurricular activity to be part of at a very low or no cost to the district, then that's something I'm always going to support. The next 2 requests or initiatives are not really initiatives moving forward, they're more requirements. And those are 4 FTEs in the area of special education. 2 at Enfield High School and 2 at JFK. I spent a lot of time earlier talking about the advancements that we've made in special education. And these aren't initiatives, those are investments. These positions aren't new because we're creating something new. These are to maintain what we currently have, to make sure that we're continuing to be in compliance in special education, and to make sure that we continue to offer the programming and the resources for those kids who need it most. So though these look like new positions, they're not. These are what we need to maintain the services we're providing for our kids in the area of special education. Again, 2 at Enfield High, 2 at JFK. I'm asking for an additional art teacher at JFK. We feel that the addition of an art teacher at JFK will help balance the class sizes with adding some different elective courses over there. And going through the process with the folks at JFK and the folks at Central Office, we feel that we can better schedule the building and create better class sizes across the entire middle school with an addition of just 1 FTE at JFK for art. I bragged a little bit about our social studies department. This request is a complete byproduct of the fact that we no longer have study halls at Enfield High School. One of the things that we didn't calculate initially when we were eliminating study halls was the amount of elective kids we're going to take, and that ultimately we were going to run out of electives. So in the grand scheme of things, this is a good problem to have. This new initiative of adding another social studies teacher at the high school is just to increase the amount of course offerings that we have for kids. Dan mentioned his civic leadership course. That was a direct correlation of what I'm talking about now. A number of years ago, we added electives at Enfield High School under social studies. You saw those kids come and present to you. Those are the courses that we're looking to move forward. That's going to be expanding upon those programs, so that's why I'm supporting adding another social studies teacher at the high school. The next one is something that we've been talking about for years, and I can't ignore the request any longer. And that's for an actual certified ESL teacher at JFK. Right now, our English language learning program consists of part-time tutors who are paid out of a grant, but their hours are limited based upon what funding we have through the grant. And the reality is our demographics have changed. We have students who come here with 0 English skills. And I know you've had this discussion through the curriculum subcommittee and when we talked about testing and scoring, but I want you to imagine for a moment, a student comes to Enfield with 0 English skills whatsoever. They got 12 months, because 12 months from now, they're going to be tested and graded and scored to compare with their peers. So if you're an 11th grade kid and you've only been here for a year and you don't speak English when you get here in 10th grade, you got a year to figure it out, because we're going to start scoring you on the same way as you've been here your whole life. The reality is our demographics have changed. Our tutors are flooded. Some of these kids right now are getting 1 hour, 2 hour a week of ESL instruction when they really should be getting 5, 6, 7 hours. This is a request that I can no longer, I can't ignore any longer, so I'm going to support adding a certified ESL teacher at the middle school. And there's 2 more initiatives going forward. One that's not on here, one that is. 6 building subs at the elementary schools. This is a unique one. You may or may not be aware that we have what we call permanent building subs at Enfield High School and at JFK. So you know we use Kelly Services for our substituting contract, and you've all probably heard some complaints at some point, whether it be from a teacher or a constituent, who said there was a lack of sub coverage at some point during the year. So we're trying to figure out creative ways to address this. I can't point the finger at Kelly Services. The reality is the economy is better. There aren't as many people wanting substitute teaching positions as there was 5, 6 years ago. So the pool is much smaller. The end result of that is if subs aren't available, classes are going uncovered. So one of the areas that we're looking at is mirroring what we do at the middle and high school at the elementary schools and creating a permanent building sub to help with coverage in the event that we have teacher absences. What this can also do, and I'm going to put an asterisk next to it because we're in the process of figuring it out, but this will allow our principals at the elementary schools to get creative on how they cover these classes. This also will give them the opportunity to get creative in scheduling the building to hopefully create more windows of time for kids to do other things, such as extended recess. You're welcome, Olivia. So this was an initiative that we were debating on how we were going to make it work. At the end of the day, I think it's important that we continue to move forward with this initiative. And last but not least, there's one more that's included, and that's a technology request. One thing that we have done extremely well in this town with the completion of the Enfield High School project is Enfield High School has more than adequate technology inside the building. So the amount of access that kids have to technology while they're at Enfield High School, the infrastructure of a strong technology program is there. One area that we do lack and we do fall behind to the vast majority of our neighbors and our peers is in the area of the actual device that kids have in their hands while they're either in the building or out in the building. You might have heard it referred to as a one-to-one program. There aren't any districts left that we're connected to that don't have some sort of a one-to-one program for their kids. With this one-to-one technology integration program, every student and teacher at Enfield High School will be provided with an iPad. I put the bullet point on here just as a reminder to tell you guys something. And that reminder is I often hear some criticism when it comes to our budget request. And the biggest criticism I often hear is $71 million, I'd support it if the money went to the kids. This is it. We're not getting one. He's getting one. The purpose of this is to put this directly in their hands. And the beauty of this program is I'm not asking for any money to fund it. One of the things we tell all of our administrators, and I told the gentleman sitting behind me, we're going to do this, find the money in the existing budget to fund it. I can't put another request in to come out and increase our percentage ask if we're going to initiate a program like this. So when I give you the final unveiling of the numbers, the additional money is to fund the things I just told you, not to fund this iPad program. There was a litmus test when we got these machines. And one of the areas, and we're going to do a formal presentation to the entire board so you get an opportunity to see what these iPads do. The reason that we're going with iPads is, without getting too technical on everyone, is the most integrated machine that most districts use are Chromebooks. But when you use a Chromebook, you have to use the Google platform. We're not on the Google platform. So every teacher, every student, every administrator, all of us use Office 365. So in order for us to transfer, we have to double the cost of the machines because we have to reconvert everything we do into the Google format. We needed to find a machine that could run dual platforms. So that's when we came in with the idea of iPads. Now, we were approached by some high-level executives at Apple who just unveiled that these are the new Apple one-to-one devices that they're going to be demoing out to school districts. Once we get on board with this, we're going to be the first one in our area outside of the Gold Coast who every kid at Enfield High School will have the opportunity to have one of these semi-indestructible iPad Pros with a crayon in their hands. The other reason I want to mention this is I started the presentation in Enfield High School with our graduation rate and also the NES&C recommendation process. I'm expecting that report in the coming weeks from the visiting team, and I fully expect that of all the accommodations we're going to get and all the praise we're going to get for the infrastructure of the building and all the great things we do there, I am 100% confident that they are going to cite us for the lack of technology that we actually have in our kids' hands. It's time. It's in the best interest of our kids to put these are what these kids are going to use when they leave. These are what these kids are going to use now. They're using them now. It's incumbent upon us to put the right tools in our hands. I ask you guys a question. When you all got sworn in and you got your badges, you got your policy book, you came in and did your fingerprints or whatever, you also got something else, right? Mr. Rutledge, what'd you just touch? Okay, so let me ask you this. Why do you need one to do your job, but he doesn't? I'm not putting you on the spot. You just happened to touch it the wrong time, that's all. I'll ask the same question to the members of the town council. I'll mention that to the members of the council because I watch council meetings and they all have their iPads in front of them. The building committee, when you finally pick the names, what was the first request we got from the chair of the building committee? We need iPads for the building committee. So I'll ask them the same question. Why do they need them, but our kids at the high school don't need them? Now, in a perfect world, I would love to integrate this across the entire district, but we have to take baby steps. At a minimum, we have to put them in the hands of our kids at our high school with the hope that we'll start to integrate it. So by the time we open up that brand new shiny JFK Middle School, all our kids there will have them as well. One last thing on the iPads, there was 2 litmus tests that I used of this because I wasn't sold on this was the device that we wanted. First of all, this is a demo that they gave us. I brought it home, and I gave it to my sophomore daughter who was in her room doing her homework that night. And I said, do me a favor, take this, log into Google Classroom, do your homework on this, and then tomorrow tell me what you like better, the Chromebook that your district gave you or this iPad. In about 20 minutes, she came downstairs, and she said, pardon my language, my Chromebook sucks. I want one of those. And my response to her was, great. We could finally move to Enfield. Go tell your friends goodbye. That didn't fly very well, but the point was this is a better device than a lot of our peers are using and giving to their kids. The other litmus test was a gentleman at the table. We actually handed this to our kids in our digital video class and said, do us a favor. Take a look at it and tell us what you think. I also referenced earlier in the presentation, which seems like 3 days ago, the Superintendent's Advisory Committee. This was something that these kids have been asking me for since the first meeting I had with them last year. Why don't we have devices? I have friends in Suffield. I have friends in Summers. I have cousins in other places. Everybody has them, Mr. Dresnick. Why don't we have them? That's a damn good question. So now it's time. So one of the things we are trying to prevent for tonight, and it's my fault, I need to give him ample warning, is Dan and some of his colleagues in our digital video class are actually going to put together a YouTube video to share with the board on why these kids need it and what we can do with it. And the capabilities that these machines have, and some of you had an opportunity to come to a curriculum meeting and see it. If you weren't sold yet, I'll just ask that when we do present it, take a look at what these things can do, and that will ultimately, I'm sure, change your mind as it changed mine. So here it is, my spending request. I told you already I needed 1.45% in order to meet fixed costs. All the other initiatives, minus the iPads, let me be very clear, these are covered. There's an extra $583,000 or 0.082%. For a grand total of 72.9% or a 2.27% budget increase. Some may think it's high, some may think it's low. The reality is we did the best we could to come in with what we felt was a reasonable number, but still move this district forward. Before those fiscal conservatives freak out, there are still a lot of things we don't know. We talked about it, we can complain about it till we're blue in the face about how this process is backwards, but the reality is I'm standing here on January 8th with a large percentage of my budget. I have no idea what I'm going to need. This budget includes 0 retirements. Our teachers and administrators aren't required to notify us until February if they intend to retire. I have no idea who's staying or going right now. I'm not going to know and by the time I find out, you're already going to send this over to the town council. So we're not going to know this information until the spring. Our health and other insurances. If you recall last year, our health insurance, I started at minus 1.5%. It was a great year. At the end of the year, we got to -3. Now, we didn't actually have to go to -3 because, as I said earlier, we got more money than we asked for. So that extra money that the council gave us and not having to make that other 1.5 cut in health insurance is allowing us to feed that reserve of that 1% to carry over going into the next year. But as it stands today, our health insurance cost is going up 6.5%. Now, the good news is that's a not to exceed number. The bad news is there's no guarantee it's going down. The worst news is I have no idea where it's going to be by the end of the year, but I have to unfortunately present to you guys a number tonight, and I have to budget this as conservatively as I can. I think Mrs. Riley said everything I could say and better when it comes to our magnet school tuition costs for next year. You know, this is a topic of conversation that we have a lot at the state level with some of my peers and my colleagues, and as well as the executive director at CREC. And the reality is, whether we like it or not, from the state's perspective, CREC has been severely underfunded as well. Yeah, everybody looks at the shiny buildings, but when you look at the operating costs, CREC's been running at a deficit. So the sad truth is, if the state legislature doesn't increase the per pupil expenditures for CREC next year, they have nowhere else to go but to pass those additional costs on to us. So right now, I've got close to $500,000 in new money in for magnet school tuitions because I was told directly, worst case scenario, this is what you're going to need to cover. Now, again, come springtime, we have more information. Hopefully, it's not as dark as we think right now. That's another area that we can achieve either savings or reinvestment, depending upon what our allocation is going to be. But those are things we just don't know now, but I have no choice but to budget that. Same thing with excess costs. It was 73% last year. It was 70% the year before. It's supposed to be 100%. It's never been 100%. I have no idea. I have to go low on that number right now, so we're at 70 at the moment. If it comes in higher than that, that's less money than we have to ask for, or we can have to cut from other areas. Let me just put in perspective for you. If you look back, we're dropped off a year from this chart from last year, but that 2.27% that I'm asking for, with the exception of last year, which, again, Dr. Schuman's going to kill me, this is the second lowest that a superintendent in the last 5 years has ever asked for. What's more significant about this number, if you look at what the board has actually requested from the town council, again, with the exception of last year, this is the lowest request that we've ever asked for. More importantly, I want you to focus on the pink area or coral or whatever the color is. If you look down at what you actually received from the town council over the last 5 years, with the exception of 2014 and 15, when we're flat funded, the 2.27% that I'm requesting through my requested budget right now is actually less than anything you actually received from the town council, not asked for. What I'm asking for now is less than the council has actually given us over the last 5 years, the exception of that 1 year. So again, is it perfect? There's a lot of unknowns at this point, but trying to balance what's in the best interest and also be the best interest of the kids, best interest of moving the district forward, but at the same time making sure that we recognize the work the council did with us bailing us out last year and try to be as responsible as we can with the town's funding. Finally, if he's watching, I'll keep doing this till he tells me to stop, but for Mr. Peabody, here's your value adds. We get to keep all existing staff and programs with this budget request. This maintains our transition classrooms at our primary buildings. It continues with our district-wide PBIS program, and it enhances our social and emotional supports for students. It enhances learning opportunities at all levels. It continues with our pre-K to STEAM initiatives. It also allows for us to be in compliance with our NASC accreditation process. And lastly, it continues to provide athletic opportunities for students through our unified program, our varsity, junior varsity, freshman, as well as our middle school sports programs. That said, Mr. Chairman, right now I'm going to ask Mr. Longy if he'll pass out the documentation for you and your books. And if we play our cards right and actually do this process the right way, this should be the last year we have to sacrifice a number of trees to give you guys this information. That concludes the superintendent's proposed budget.
Thank you, Mr. Drezig. We'll let Mr.
Actually, you wanna
Longy.
just have us pass it down and you can stay in one spot? No. All right. It's yours.
He's got him named, so let him.
Thank you, sir.
Come on now.
Thank you.
That's it.
I'd like two. I'm going to take Tim's.
You gonna take Tim's? Okay.
Just kidding.
Thank you.
I'm just going to disseminate super secret copies.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Rich and I have talked before about driveway lanes. They're not real lanes.
All right, so we good with that?
Yeah.
So you guys have homework? I want 10-page reports from all of you by your next meeting. Double-spaced, single-sided.
Can they be in
14
crayon?
font.
Yeah, 14 font.
B.
Yes. All right, so we're moving on to 11B. Before we do, though, Kathy, we never checked with ETV if they could film that night. They're good, too? Okay. I thought of that halfway through his... Okay. All right. So 11B, we have down here January 22nd BOE meeting location change needed because it so happens with Martin Luther King Day, the council is going to be sitting in our seats here that day because their meeting gets pushed to a Tuesday. So I made the suggestion to possibly move our meeting to the 29th instead, which is a week later, because given there's 5 Tuesdays in this month, so it'll still give us 2 weeks before our next meeting in February. So I want to change this to read, to cancel January 22nd's BOE meeting and to have a special meeting on January 29th at 7 p.m. in this council chambers. Do I have a motion? So moved by Mr. Poe. Seconded by Ms. Hernandez. Any discussion? Mr. Rutledge.
Just out of curiosity, I know you just said special meeting, but would you want to call it a regular meeting?
No, we have to call it a special meeting because regular meetings are pre-sent to the council, to the town clerk's office, where this will be a special meeting. So we're canceling our regular meeting, but it's going to be literally the same agenda. It's not, we just have to call it a special meeting.
Very good.
Is that correct? Wow, I'm good. So, any other discussion? Show of hands or roll call? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Mrs. DePoe?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Mrs. Riley?
Yes.
Mr. Renier?
Absolutely.
Chairman Cruzel?
Yes, and this is more to benefit
Motion passes.
if we moved the meeting to Alcorn, we wouldn't be on TV. So this is more to benefit for the people that watch our meetings to be on TV, to bring people to our meetings, and to be accessible and show off our shining star that Mr. Drezig just spent an hour and a half telling us about.
Yes. Okay.
So we'll leave it at that.
Board committee reports.
Okay, committee reports. A, curriculum. Sarah, you want to handle that, or?
Our next meeting is the 15th at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And we have a Menton.
B, finance.
Our next meeting is Monday the 14th, next Monday at 6. We have not met since the last one.
C, policy.
Our next meeting is 1/16 at 5:30 in the superintendent's office.
D, leadership, we haven't met. E, joint facilities, we had a meeting last Thursday. We are in the process of trying to get funding for additional work on roofs. So I know they're working with the town manager on that. And any other thing you can add? Or, wait a minute, no.
No. Oh, just nailing down the RFP for the person to assess.
Yes, to go
all
through
the buildings?
to assess all the buildings, so we're working on that. JFK Building Committee met last Thursday for the first time, and they're in the process of hiring an architect. They're putting an RFP out for an architect, so that's the first step, and they're going to try for fast tracking the construction, just like they did with the high school, and more to come. And any other committees? No? Number 13, approval of minutes, regular Board of Ed meeting minutes, December 11, 2018.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rutledge,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Riley. Any discussion? All in favor? Against? And we have seven in favor. Approval of accounts and payroll?
I have none.
None. Correspondence and communications? None. We have a need for executive session. Do I have a motion?
I move we go into executive session.
Moved by Ms. Riley, seconded by Mr. Poe. Any discussion? All in favor? We are in executive session, and we will not be returning to camera, so good night and thank you.